And over here is what in fact, two tiny monkeys would eat in one day. They're called marmosets. They've got a lovely little salad here, some baby food, some monkey chow. And what about this? I wouldn't fancy eating this. This is a big hunk of raw meat for the tiger. Elizabeth, why do you add this chemical to the tiger's food?
That's like a vitamin that you have to add to the food, because in the wild they would be eating animals like deers, and they would eat their innards, and they're grass-eating animals, deer, and so you must make sure they're getting all the right vitamins. So we add it to their meat.
How do you find out what wild animals eat?
You have to look at studies that are done on animals in the wild, and then try to translate it into what you can give them easily in a zoo.
Because I see you've got some boiled eggs there for the gorillas. I'm sure gorillas don't boil eggs in the jungle.
No, certainly they don't, but they will eat some insects, and so a boiled egg is protein, so it's a protein supplement.
And here are the zoo's two young gorillas, feeling very lively today. That's chest drumming, a kind of signal. They're called Sam and Cindy, and in the wild they live in the rainforests of Central Africa. I visited them when Sean was feeding them grapes.
Do they fight with each other?
They wrestle around with one another. They love wrestling, and as you see, they're greedy, extremely greedy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to eat one of these quick before they help them all. This is Sam. He's very impatient. And Cindy, as you see, is a lady.
And these are quite young, they're only 3 years old.
These are only 3 years of age.
How big will they grow?
Oh, they will grow maybe 5 foot in height and weigh about 60 stone.
Would they be dangerous when they're grown up?
They can be dangerous, yeah.
Barney's sensibly staying outside the cage. Not that Sam and Cindy would mean to hurt anyone. They're just playful and very strong. Those long arms are very useful when you're swinging from tree to tree in Africa.
Now it's time to say goodbye to the gorillas. Can you remember all the different animals we met today at Dublin Zoo? Maybe you could paint a big picture for your classroom wall, just like the one that's being painted here at Dublin Zoo. Barney and I had a marvellous day at the zoo. Did you enjoy it? Which animal did you like best? Well, the children of St. Joseph's Primary School in Carryduff have visited the zoo, and they've done some great drawings of the animals they saw. Look at the big picture behind me. Look, there are some giraffes covered with spots, and the children have made trees. There's a little zebra with his black and white stripes. And up here we have kangaroos bouncing along, and some camels with 2 humps. And up in the corner there are 2 white polar bears standing on an iceberg, and there are some penguins beside them. And over here we have a brown lion with a big shaggy mane. Oh look, and here's another zebra with black and white stripes, just like a zebra crossing. We've got all these animals around us, so let's sing them the zoo song. Bye-bye, see you soon. I am a little waiter, all dressed in white and black. When I waddle on the rocks, my feet go flap. I dive into the water and swim just like a fish. Some say I'm a biscuit, why not have a guess? Guess, 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 guess. Hello, boys and girls. Barney and I have just been reading a story all about a little boy called Thomas. He lived long ago in a cottage in County Tyrone. When he was 5 years old, his parents decided to sell their farm and sail to America in a big ship. So Thomas spent the rest of his life in America. The cottage Thomas lived in and the school he went to can still be seen in the Ulster American Folk Park in County Tyrone. We're going to take a trip to see where Thomas lived. Will you come too? First, let's sing a song all about the little house that Thomas lived in. There once was a small boy called Thomas who lived in the County Tyrone. His father and mother kept a wee farm, and a cottage was Thomas's home. The cottage it had only 3 little rooms, and the roof was made out of straw. With roses growing all round the door, it was the prettiest you ever saw. Let's go to Tommy's house, let's go to Tommy's house, let's go to Tommy's house now. Let's go to Tommy's house, let's go to Tommy's house, let's go to Tommy's house now. Barney and I have travelled to the Ulster American Folk Park in County Tyrone, and there are lots of little animals here like these chickens and ducks. And this is the house that Thomas lived in until he was 5 years old. Does it look different from your house? It's got a thatched roof. Look at the half door. Do you know why the doors of country houses were made in 2 halves like this? The top half could be left open while the bottom was kept closed to keep the hens and farm animals out. A good idea, wasn't it? Let's go inside. Isn't it amazing how Barney always finds the most comfortable place? He's climbed into Thomas's little bed to have a nap. This is Thomas's bedroom, and every morning when he woke up, he would wash in a bowl like this. There was no plumbing to carry the water to the house in pipes, so one of Thomas's first jobs every day was to fetch water from the pump in the yard and carry it to his mother so that she could wash the dishes and the clothes.
Here's some nice fresh buttermilk.
These children are from St. Patrick's Primary School and the Model Primary School in Newton Stewart, and they've dressed up in the kind of clothes that people used to wear long ago. They're pretending they lived 100 years ago, just like Thomas. Well, Mark has brought in the water, and Bernadette and Gareth are bringing in the turf. There has to be plenty of fuel to keep the fire burning brightly, because all the cooking was done on the open fire. Phyllis cleans the griddle with a goose's wing. Now she's pouring some batter onto the griddle to make pancakes. The batter is made from flour, eggs, sugar and buttermilk. Once you see little bubbles on the top of each pancake, it's time to turn them over.
Children, this is your lunch for school. A nice piece of oat cake.
Well, now the chores and breakfast are finished, so the children get a piece of oat cake each to take to school for lunch. They also have to bring 2 pieces of turf to school. Not to eat, of course, but for the classroom fire, so they will be warm all day. Let's follow them on their way to school. The children probably walk to school in their bare feet, as many people were very poor in those days. All the children from the surrounding cottages are on their way to school, and they've each got their pieces of turf for the classroom fire. And look, Barney's come to school today in a little cart. This is Castletown National School, and lessons are just about to begin. In the summertime, the children stayed at school from 9 in the morning till 4, and in the wintertime, from 9 until 3. The school has only one classroom where all the children sat. Barney has taken his place in the row with the children. Do you have long desks like this in your classroom? Do you think it would be good fun to sit in a row with all your friends? The first lesson today is handwriting. Do you know what this is for? It's an ink well, and this is the kind of pen the pupils used to write with. It's made from a feather, and it's called a quill. And to write, you had to dip the nib of the pen into the ink, like this.
Hi, children. We're going to do some handwriting, and I want you to take your quill and dip it in the inkwell and write on your copy page I've given you. Don't forget to use your blotting paper to blot out the excess ink. I don't want to see any blots on your page now, so be very careful whenever you're writing. The first word is slate. S-L-A-T-E. Slate. I shall come round and check. Watch the way you write your T's, boy. Toes right to the line, please.
The schoolmistress would gather the children around her to hear their reading.
Stop there.
Look, there's even a chalk circle drawn on the floor. The children call this towing the line.
Good. Now we're going to do a little reading about haymaking.
Hark, what noise is that? It is the mower whetting the scythe. He is going to cut the grass and the flowers. The scythe is very sharp. Do not go too near it. Come into this field, see all the grass is cut down.
The last lesson before break time is arithmetic, and the pupils are going to use the counting frame.
The new mow grass.
Each line contains 10. We'll have Damien out. Damien, I want you to count up to 18.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18.
Good boy.
Playtime then was very similar to today in some ways. Skipping is skipping whatever century or country you're in. But boys and girls kept much more to their own games. For the boys, there was throwing the horseshoes. There was an iron peg in the ground, and the horseshoes had to land around it. There's a boy who's good at it. 2 perfect hits. Barney's going to stay and play with the children for a while. You and I can go and visit the Hughes house and learn how to make corn dollies.
Just keep twisting and turning, all right? There you are now. So you can be able to continue now yourself.
When the corn was cut, the children had great fun making corn dollies like these.
Now look at all the simple things that can be made out of corn. This here would be quite easy. This is just a true straw plait. And you made it and you put a little bow on it and hung it in your coat. If you're more artistic, you can make this one here. It's a cone shape and it's a 5 straw twist.
These corn dollies are lovely, aren't they? Maisie, how do you make something like this?
But that is a very simple one to make. I would teach the children that the first time they'd come here, and it is a God sign, 2 pieces of twig tied in the centre, and take your straw and do the figure 8.
It didn't take us long to learn how to twist the straw round and round the cross, slowly building up the shape. When you need another straw, you cut off the end and push another one into it. When the harvest was all collected, Thomas would have helped his mother to make little corn dollies like these, and they were used to decorate the house and the church for the Thanksgiving service. Look, I've just finished a God's eye, and I've tied 2 heads of corn on the end as a decoration. It's all ready to be hung on the wall. It's been very interesting learning how to make corn dollies. I've promised Barney that I'll meet him in the weaver's house now. Hello, everybody. Barney's got here first, and he's learning how to dye wool. That means to give it different colours. Roberta's going to show us how it's done.
Well, all natural dyes, and I have an onion skin dye made here, boys and girls, and you're going to have a look to see the colour. See, it's quite a deep colour from onion skin.
The children see a simple way of getting colours out of things like onion skins. Phyllis has a length of natural wool ready. It starts completely white and then goes into the onion skin juice.
Lift it up now, gently. And lift it very carefully. And you can see there's a little bit of dye in the wool. But if we put that back on the heat and simmer for maybe an hour and a half, we should end up with a nice orange dye.
It's just amazing the lovely colours you can get from the plants and trees all around us in the countryside. The natural colours of the fields and flowers are there. So long ago, people's clothes matched the landscape perfectly. The flowers of the broom, when they're made into juice, colour the wool a lemonish shade of yellow. And these colours come from different berries, like blueberries and blackberries. Even those nasty stinging nettles can make a soft brown colour. Thomas's father and mother had nearly all the things they needed on the farm. They had eggs from the hen, and milk, butter, and cheese from cows, and wool from the sheep. But there were a few things that they needed to buy in a shop. So now and again, Thomas and his mother would go into town to shop. I wonder what shops looked like long ago.
Plenty of bargains this week for you all. Plenty of bargains this week.
Shiny new buses, by bargains.
This is the kind of street where Thomas and his mother used to do their shopping. And there are lots of different kinds of shops here. Look, this is a pub, and it's owned by somebody called Patrick McMahon. And on the other side of the street is McMaster's Saddler's shop. Can you guess what was made there? That's right, saddles and harness. Well, nowadays people drive around in cars and they have garages to fix them. But long ago, people travelled in carts and on horseback, and they needed harness and saddles for their horses. Next door is the medical hall. Inside, there are shelves and shelves of jars and bottles full of strange things. Nowadays, we call it the chemist shop. Barney's come down to the other end of the street, and he's looking into the window of Patterson's hardware and grocery store. I think he can see some sweets in there. This is the kind of shop that Thomas would have spent his halfpennies in, buying sweets and candy. Let's go and have a look inside. Good morning.
Good morning. Here are girls.
Look at all the jars of sweeties. There are brandy balls, butter balls, and acid drops. And look, there are 3 gingerbread men. There's even some lemonade, but it's in a bottle very different from the one we're used to.
Could have 2 ounces of mixed sweets, please.
That was fun, wasn't it? Before we go, let's look at some of the work done by the pupils of Tattisala and Cavanagh Primary Schools. Here's a picture of some of the cottages that we saw at the folk park. They've got thatched roofs and a pile of turf beside that one. And here's the big ship that Thomas and his parents sailed over to America in. And that must be a Conestoga wagon, and it's sitting outside a big American farmhouse. And here's a little Irish cottage. It's made out of little stones and it's whitewashed, just like a real cottage. And there's a little orange cart sitting right beside it. And these tiny cottages were made out of clay. Why don't you have a go making cottages like this and paint them white and yellow and blue, just like these cottages? There's a little person standing on that one, I think, outside a blue door. And look at the windows, they've got blue frames on them too. And they've all got thatched roofs, of course. Well, let's sing about Thomas's little school before we go. Thomas had no shoes to wear on his feet. Still he whistled and sighed, till the school teacher stood and rang the big bell, and through the schoolyard Thomas ran. He and his friends all Hello everyone. Barney and I are just looking at the things we made last week at the Ulster American Folk Park in County Tyrone. This is a corn dolly which I helped to make. And Barney's holding some wool. He learned how to dye it and give it that nice yellow colour. We saw the cottage where a little boy called Thomas was born and the school he went to. When Thomas was 5 years old, he and his parents sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to America to start a new life. And they landed in a place called Baltimore. People used to call America the New World. It took Thomas and his father and mother 13 weeks to sail to the New World. They landed in Baltimore in America. And when they left the ship, Thomas's daddy hired a big wagon to take them and all their baggage 300 miles to where Thomas's grandparents lived. There's a wagon like the one they used at the folk park. Let's go and see it.
Look at all this, Barney. Isn't it old?
Barney's got here first, and he's admiring this Conestoga wagon. I'm sure you've seen wagons a bit like this in films on television. It took the family 3 weeks to travel 300 miles. The roads were very bad, and the wagon only traveled 2 miles every hour. Look, that's where the horses were hitched on to pull the wagon. The family cooked their meals on a campfire by the side of the road, and at night they slept inside the wagon. Would you like to go on a journey like that? I'm sure Thomas found it very exciting. He might have sat up here on the lazy seat to watch the world go by. At last they arrived in Pennsylvania, where Thomas's grandparents and uncles were already living. Thomas's daddy bought a farm, and imagine how Thomas felt when he saw his new home for the first time. Would you like to live in a little log cabin like this? To build this house, the farmer had to cut down lots of trees in the forest. Then he cut a V-notch in the end of each log. It was very hard to get nails out in the backwoods, so the logs had to be slotted together instead of nailed together. And then into the spaces or chinks between the logs, they stuffed a mixture of straw, mud, animal hair, blood and cow manure. And on top of that, they plastered clay. They had to use the things in the forest around them to build their houses because there were no shops to buy cement or bricks. Look at the roof. It's not thatched with straw like the cottage Thomas left behind in County Tyrone. It's roofed with wooden shingles. Imagine cutting all those little squares of wood. It would take a long time. Pretend you're Thomas going into the log cabin for the very first time.
Hello, Thomas. Welcome.
Isn't it cozy in here? Can you see any differences between the log cabin and Thomas's old home in County Tyrone? The floor, the walls and the ceiling are wooden. The Ulster cottage we saw was made of stone, and the floor was earth tramped down hard. The fireplace is a different shape too, and there are logs burning instead of turf. American winters can be very cold, so the fire had to be kept burning all night long. The family took turns to get up and put more logs on the fire. And look, they've put animal skins on the walls to help keep the drafts out. There were a lot of things for Thomas to get used to in the new world. The food they grew in the farm was different, so Thomas's mother had to learn some new recipes. Some children from St. Patrick's Primary School in Newton Stewart have joined us today, and Oliver's going to show us how to make corn muffins.
Now, children, I'm going to use corn today because corn was their main crop in America, and the Indians were using this when the first explorers and settlers went out. The sugars we know today would have been much too expensive for them, of course, to use. Can you think of any other way of sweetening food? Do you ever think of honey? And then, of course, they took the syrup from the maple trees and used that as well.
For making those muffins light and fluffy, they wouldn't have had baking powder. What else could they use?
Eggs.
Quite right. Sometimes ash from the fire was added for the same reason. Now Olive finishes the mixing of eggs, flour and milk. Olive keeps adding corn flour till the dough is firm enough to roll into little balls in the hand and then pat it into shape. Here are some muffins which have been baked on the griddle over the fire, and they're ready to eat. Olive spreads a spicy mix of apples, cider and cinnamon.
Would you like one, Jane?
I'd love one, Olive, thank you. That's really lovely. Very spicy. For Thomas and his cousins, there was a whole new continent to explore, with different flowers, trees and animals. Playing in the meadows, the children had to watch out for rattlesnakes in the grass. In the woods lived wild animals like bears and wolves. They had to get used to living side by side with the Red Indians, who lived in America long before the white man arrived. Summer was the time when the crops were harvested and then flailed to beat the grain out of the husks. The grain was then ground into flour, and that's what Thomas's mother used to make muffins. Before any work could be done round the farmer needed some tools. And he came to the wood turner to get his tools and furniture made. Barney's come to watch the wood turner at work. Hello, Kieran.
Hello, Jane.
What are you working on at the moment?
I'm making a spindle for a chair.
Barney's already trying out a chair which Kieran's made, and Barney's wearing his Davy Crockett hat. Can you see the decorations on the spindle? How do you think they were made without electricity to power the lathe?
To the pole lathe, like.
Well, the settlers used a pole lathe. A long stringy pole is tied to a piece of string and then to a foot pedal. Kieran pushes the pedal and makes the pole swing up and down, turning the piece of wood he's working on. It's fascinating to watch a lump of wood taking on a beautiful shape. What other kind of things can you make on the lathe, Kieran?
Well, I've made the chair legs, tool handles, candlesticks, wooden bowls, rolling pins.
Thomas's father worked very hard, ploughing the land, sowing seed and harvesting his crops. He also planted apple and peach trees, and he kept some animals on the farm. He built fences like this all around his fields. It's called a snake fence. Can you see why? It's this shape. All the farmers built their own houses and barns with the help of their neighbours, and they needed barns to store their tools and their crops in and to keep their animals warm in the winter time. And because their farms were so far from towns and villages, they often held dances in their barns. Let's sing the barn dance song. Get your fiddle, get your bow, it's off to the neighbour's farm we'll go. The apple boiling has begun, tonight we're gonna have some fun. Left foot up, right foot down, swing your partner round and round. Up the aisle with a great big smile, keep on clapping all the while. Now the work and chores are done, the barn is full of fruit and corn. Now we'll dance the night away, celebrate the harvest day. Left foot up, right foot down, keep your partner round and round. Up the aisle with a great big smile, keep on clapping all the while. Open up the big barn door, throw some sawdust on the floor. Hi folks, hi-yo, choose your partners one and all. Left foot up, right foot down, swing your partner round and round. Up the aisle with a great big smile, keep on clapping all the while. Do you like Barney's new American outfit? Well, after a few years, Thomas's daddy built a new house for the family, and it was one just like the house behind me. Why don't we go and explore it? The homemade candles were lit in the house at night. There were only 2 rooms in the log cabin. There are 6 in this house. This is the parlour, and it's the finest room in the house. Look at the rag rug on the floor. Any material that was left over from making clothes and sheets was used for making rag rugs and patchwork quilts. This is where Thomas's father and mother slept. Their bed is covered with a patchwork quilt. It must have taken a long time to sew all those little pieces of material together. And look, even the cradle is covered with a tiny patchwork quilt. This is where Thomas slept. Would you like a bedroom like this? Let's look out of the window and see what the view is like. Thomas could see the whole farm from here. Let's go downstairs again and see if there are any more chores to be done.
Right now, children, I know Barney is very fond of his food, so I'm sure he'll be interested in this. Now, you know that these people had no fresh food in the winter time, so they had to salt their food.
Barney's found Nancy showing the children how to salt fish and meat to make them keep longer by rubbing them with salt.
All these pioneer jobs were very time-consuming and
the salt draws the moisture out of the trout, and then they don't go bad for months and months. Thomas would have taken his turn to do the salting in the summer evenings.
6 or 7 even.
There were other ways to keep food from going off, like boiling eggs and putting them in a pot with a layer of fat on the top to keep out the air. The family had to keep some food from rotting, so they had something to eat all through the winter. Of course, they had no electricity to run a fridge, but they had something almost as good. This is called a spring house. Can you see why? It does seem funny to build a little house with a spring running through, but the cold water kept the spring house cool, and foods like milk, butter, eggs, jellies and cream cheese were kept here, just the way your mother keeps some foods fresh in the fridge. The pioneer family needed food to eat in the winter, and another way of keeping food was by smoking it in the smokehouse, which the children are playing around. The smoke gave the food a nice taste and made it keep longer. The pioneer farmers had lots of good ideas about how to store the food they grew on their farm. They had to look after themselves because there was no one to help them. If they got sick, there was no doctor or hospital to go to. So they even made their own medicines out of wild herbs and flowers, and they grew them in a little garden like this. It was a hard life, but they had fun too, especially when their neighbours arrived for a barn dance. Now you've seen what it was like to be a pioneer farmer in America over 150 years ago. If you went to America now, you might still find some farmhouses like the ones we saw in the folk park, but you'd find skyscrapers too. The children of St. Patrick's Primary School in Newton Stewart and Cavanagh Primary School had great fun exploring the American houses at the folk park. They've made some lovely models of a log cabin, a ship and a wagon. And look at these drawings on the wall behind me. There's where the family went to buy their ticket for the ship to America. And they had a final blessing before they left their cottage in County Tyrone. Just look at all the people on the quay, ready to get on the ship and sail off to America. And I'm sure conditions on board ship weren't always very comfortable. And now they've arrived in America, and they're cutting up some big logs ready to build their log cabin. And there's the homestead all built. It looks very cozy, doesn't it? Well, let's sing the kind of song people in America used to dance to. Get your fiddle, get your bow, it's off to the neighbor's farm we'll go. The apple boiling has begun, tonight we're gonna have some fun. Left foot up, right foot down, swing your partner round and round. Up the aisle with a great big smile, keep on clapping all the while. All the work and chores are done, the barn is full of fruit and corn. Now we've danced the night away to celebrate the harvest day. Hello, boys and girls. Are you coming with Barney and me on our adventure today? I'm sure you all like to eat ice cream and yogurt, and you drink lots of milk. Do you know where milk comes from? That's right, from cows. Where do you think we might find some cows? Barney says we could find cows on a farm, so let's visit one. Before we go, here's a song all about a dairy farm. Down at McAfee's farm, there's an awful lot of cows. Hear them all go moo. They stroll around and they eat the grass and smile if you say shoo. There's Daisy and Delia, Daphne and Dottie, Delilah and Dimna too. It's Dolores and Doris, Diana and Deirdre, and that's only naming a few. In the summertime they live in the fields under the blue, blue sky. In the winter they have a big, big house to keep them warm and dry. There's June and Jacinta, Joanna and Jane, Jemima and Julia too. There's Judy and Jackie, Joni and Jessie, and that's only naming a few. Barney and I have travelled to Ahadui, and we're here on the banks of the River Ban, about 10 miles from Coleraine. We're visiting a farm that's owned by the McAfee family, and it's a dairy farm. That means that cows are kept here, and they're milked every day. It's the springtime now, so all the cows are out grazing in the field. Brian McAfee is going to show us around the farm. Come on, Barney. How big is your farm, Brian?
Approximately 150 acres, do you?
How many cattle do you keep on the farm?
We have 110 milking cows.
Look at this big field, it's full of cows. How many do you think there are here? Barney thinks that there are at least 100. What do you think? See, all the cows here are black and white, Brian.
They're all Friesians. Friesians are probably the breastfeed for milk production.
And it's a very big field. How big would this field be?
There's 15 acres in this field.
And it's the springtime, and see the grass is lovely and thick and luscious.
Yeah, it's great to get them out onto the grass at this time of the year because they've spent several months indoors.
Do you keep them inside all the time in the winter?
We keep them inside all the time because it's too wet and too cold to be out.
And in the summer they spend all night out here as well, do they?
They do, yes.
They look very happy today anyway, munching at the grass. Twice every day the cows are milked, so why don't you come with us and watch the milking? The cows are all collected here in the yard, and then they're brought into the milking parlour to be milked. The milking parlour's just over there. 20 cows fit in the milking parlour at a time, 10 on this side and 10 on the other side. These are the milking machines. These teacups are put onto the cow's udder. Now the pump is switched on and the milk is sucked out of the cow's udder. In the past, farmers used to milk by hand, but nowadays it's done like this and is much quicker. Brian has 120 cows to milk, and it takes 2.5 hours in the morning and 2.5 hours in the afternoon, so he does need the help of the milking machines. The cows are quite used to being milked twice a day and don't mind at all standing quietly while the milk gushes into these big glass containers. After the milk is processed, it's bottled, ready for delivery to your door. Brian has to work long hours to look after this large herd of dairy cows. The milk is pumped into this big tank, and it's stored here until the milk tanker arrives to collect it. Well, the milk tanker will be here soon, so while we're waiting for it, why don't we have a look around the rest of the farm? This is the big shed where the cows are kept in the winter time. Look over there. That's silage. It's grass that was cut last year, and it's stored in this big silo for the cows to eat during the winter when there's no grass growing outside in the fields. Do you remember what baby cows are called? calves. Let's go and see if we can find some. Hello, everybody. These are Brian's children, and they're feeding the calves today. Claire, can you tell me what you're feeding them?
We're feeding with mother's milk.
And have you heated the milk first?
Yes.
Just the way you do for a baby?
Yes.
What age is this wee calf here?
It's about 1 to 5 weeks.
And how long would they be drinking milk for?
For about 6 weeks.
And then what do they eat after that?
And then they eat nuts.
And how often do you feed them every day, Gary?
Feed them about twice every day, morning and night.
How many calves are born in this farm every year?
There's about 120 born out each year, one from each cow.
And this little calf, which is making friends with Barney, will grow up to produce about 40 pints of milk every day. And if you multiply this by all the cows on the farm, that's a lot of milk for the big tanker to collect on its rounds.
Hello there. How many farms does the tanker visit every day?
About 30. I started this morning about 7:30, and so far I've got about 10 done. And hopefully by the end of today, I'll have about 30, 35 done.
And how much milk does the tanker hold?
About 2,000 gallons or so.
Well, I'll let you get on with your work now. The tanker driver connects up the pipe, switches on the pump, and all the milk inside the tank is sucked into the lorry. Well, now all the milk is safely inside the tanker, and the driver is ready to go on to the next farm. We're all standing well out of the way because you know when big lorries are near, you must be very, very careful. Well, Brian, thank you very much for showing Barney and I around your farm.
You're welcome, Jane. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks. Well, we're off to the dairy now to see what happens to the milk next. This is Bangor Dairies, and a big milk tanker has just arrived. All the milk that the tanker has collected from the farms is being pumped from the lorry into a storage tank. What do you think happens to the milk now? That's right, it's put into bottles and cartons. But first it has to be pasteurized. That's to make sure that any germs in the milk are killed. And that's done by heating the milk. But everybody who works at the dairy has to wear a white coat and a white hat. That's to make sure that everything stays very clean. Well, Barney and I are all dressed ready for our visit to the dairy. Now the milk has been pasteurized and it's ready to be put into the bottles. It was very noisy in there, wasn't it? Well, not all the milk is put into bottles and cartons. Can you think of any foods that are made from milk? There's butter, cheese, yogurt. Well, yogurt and cheese are made here at Bangor Dairies, and Barney would like to see yogurt being made. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Jane.
This is Sam Campbell, manager of Bangor Dairies. Sam, how do you make yogurt?
We take milk, add skim milk powder and sugar to it, mix it up, and then pasteurize it.
Do you remember what pasteurized means? The mixture is heated up to kill any germs in it. What happens to the yogurt next, Sam?
We then put that mix into tanks and add the yogurt culture. And it takes about 16 hours for the yogurt to be made.
How does the yogurt get its nice flavors?
We add the real fruit to the yogurt, and it's the flavor of the fruit that's coming through.
What kind of flavors do you add?
Strawberry, peach, raspberry, pear, all sorts of lovely flavors.
Well, now the yogurt is ready to be packed in cartons and sent off to the shops for you and me to buy. Barney's disappeared, but I think I know where he's got to. He's come here to Port Stewart to visit a very famous Italian family called the Morellis. And guess what the Morellis make? Ice cream. This is Mr. Morelli, and he's going to teach Barney and me how to make ice cream. Mr. Morelli, how do you make ice cream?
Well, we put a lot of nice things in it, such as milk, butter, cream, sugar,
sugar substitutes such as glucose, and a few other secret ingredients which I'm not going to tell you anything about.
I see.
It's very simple, actually. There's a lot of, it's all good things that go into it. Nothing out of the ordinary.
And you put all these things into one of these big machines?
Yes, we have a special machine here which pasteurizes the mix. And after pasteurization, we cool it very quickly, and then we store it in these vats. And from these vats, we can age it overnight, and then we freeze it in here.
Let me see you doing some of that.
Yes, this is the mix that's already been aged.
What does aged mean?
Well, it's kept overnight for about 12 hours, roughly. It'll taste better if it's aged. If it's too fresh, it won't taste as good.
Italy's a really special place for ice cream, isn't it?
Oh, yes, indeed.
That because it's very hot?
I think they eat more ice cream here in Ireland than they do in Italy.
Do they? Your family have been making ice cream a long time.
Well, I've been making it for 39 years, but my father and my uncle before me, we started in 1911 in this area. So we should know something about it by now.
How many different flavours of ice cream can you make here? You know, Barney's favourite is chocolate.
Is it?
Can we see
I'll
some
show you.
chocolate made?
Certainly. That's the chocolate already prepared.
Lovely.
And I'm going to mix it with it in the mix here. We simply add the prepared flavours into the actual mix.
How many different flavours can you make here?
We normally make 6 flavours. We stick to the most popular ones. And they are rum and raisin, hazelnut, butterscotch, strawberry, mint, and chocolate. 6 or 7 flavours, depending on how busy we are.
Sounds delicious.
The chocolate is being made, and the vanilla is nearly ready to come out. So I'll take it out now, okay?
Barney and I had a great day at McAfee's farm in Ahadui. The next time you eat an ice cream or have a yoghurt for your lunch, you'll know how it was made and where all the milk you drink comes from. The children of Ballyholme Primary School have drawn beautiful pictures of cows being milked and out in the fields eating grass. Look, there are some Ayrshire cows, and they're brown and they've got horns on their heads. And beside them are some Jersey cows, and they're a lighter shade of brown, aren't they? And next door to them are some Frisian cows, and I know they're Frisian because they're all black and white. Well, here's a model of a farm, and look, a big blue milk tanker is just arriving. The children have built fences round the fields and some big barns in the background. The fields are full of black and white cows and brown and white cows. Can you see a horse there in the corner? And I see a dog as well, and there are pigs and chickens and a big goose in the background. And I think they have some trees on the farm as well, and a big ploughed field. It'd be nice to have a farm like that, wouldn't it? Well, Barney and I will be back soon with another adventure. Let's sing our song, McAfee's Farm, before we all go home. Down on McAfee's farm, there's an awful lot of cows. Hear them all go moo. They stroll around and they eat the grass and smile if you say shoo. There's Daisy and Delia, Daphne and Dottie, Delilah and Dimna too. Hello, boys and girls. Barney and I are busy packing our suitcase because we're going on a little trip. We're going to a country where the cows have long shaggy hair and big horns. The men wear kilts made of tartan and people eat lots of shortbread and haggis. It's a beautiful country with high mountains and deep lochs. And there's supposed to be a monster in one of the lochs. Have you guessed yet where we're going? To Scotland. Well, Scotland isn't really very far away. It's only about 20 miles from the Antrim coast. If you could get into your car and drive to Scotland, it would only take about half an hour. But our car doesn't float, so we'll have to put it on a boat and sail across. The boat we're going to travel on is called a ferry. It carries people and cars across the sea. Before we go, I'll sing a song all about a ferryman who had to ferry a fox, a chicken, and a bag of grain across a river, but he had a problem. The river ran deep and wide, through the valley green. There was no bridge to walk across, it was far too wide to swim. When anyone wanted over, they went to the ferryman. He rowed them over in his little boat to put a penny in his hand. Ferryman, oh ferryman, the river runs deep and wide. It's much too far to swim across, ferry me to the other side. Ferryman, oh ferryman, I've got a job for you. Ferry this grain, chicken and fox, and here's a shilling for you. But watch that chicken doesn't eat the grain or get eaten in his turn, for the fox might gobble that birdie up when your back is turned. Ferryman, oh ferryman, the river runs deep and wide. It's much too far to swim across, ferry me to the other side.
Well, Barney and I have just arrived in Larne in County Antrim. We've got our car all packed up with suitcases, boots and jackets and all the things we might need for our trip to Scotland. This is Larne Harbour. Look at all the big ferries docked here. Soon they'll be sailing out of Larne Harbour and off to Scotland. Let's go, Barney. We don't want to miss the ferry. This is called the car deck, and underneath us is another deck where the lorries are parked during the crossing. The lorries are all chained up to make sure they don't move while the boat is at sea. This boat has a big door at each end. In Larne, all the cars and lorries drive in the door at one end, and when we get to Scotland, they drive out the door at the other end. It's called a drive-on, drive-off ferry. Well, now we parked our car, so let's go upstairs and watch the ferry leaving Larne Harbour. Come on, Barney, hurry up. It's an exciting feeling being on board a ship which is just about to set sail. This ferry is called the Galloway Princess, and she was built in the shipyards in Belfast. Just imagine building a boat as big as this one, with room for all those cars and lorries. There are also engine rooms and kitchens, restaurants and lounges, and even little bedrooms called cabins for the crew to sleep in. The people who work on board the ship are called the crew. Well, now it's time we were off, so let's watch the ship putting out to sea.
Look at the huge ropes which tie the ship up to the pier. They're taken off the bollards. The ramp where the cars drive on and off the ferry is lifted, while the mooring ropes are being hauled in. Now the huge doors at the end of the car deck are closed tight. A light comes on in the engine rooms to show the doors are shut and the engines are started. And we're off, ploughing our way out of Larne Harbour and heading for the open sea. Look how big the ferry is, and just imagine all the cars, lorries and people being carried inside.
Barney's looking at these smaller boats which are tied onto the deck of the ferry, and I was telling him they're lifeboats. In the case of an emergency, they can be swung out and lowered down into the water with the passengers and crew on board.
Can you see the little propeller with its 3 blades? When the engine of the lifeboat is working, that spins around and drives the lifeboat forwards. And look at the big wooden rudder. That turns from side to side and steers the boat. Do you see those 2 wee islands? They're called the Maidens. Did you ever hear the story of the children of Lear? A wicked witch cast a spell over King Lear's children and turned them into swans. They spent 300 years living here on the Sea of Moyle, and it was a very grey and cold, stormy place to live. Well, it's getting cold out here now, so Barney and I are going to find somewhere to have a nice warm drink. This is the cafeteria, and it's warm and cozy in here. The boat is like a floating hotel. You can have a meal, sit and talk to your friends, or watch television. Why don't you finish your lemonade, Barney, while I go off and talk to somebody who works on board the ship? Lots of people work on board the ship, cleaning it, cooking food in the kitchens, working in the engine rooms, and of course sailing the ship. This is Jim, who works on board. What's your job, Jim?
I'm the ship's purser.
And what exactly do you have to do?
Well, I make sure everyone's got a ticket before they come on, and then I look after them while they're on the ship.
How many hours do you work on board the ship?
I work for 24 hours on, and then 48 hours off.
So that's 1 whole day and night on board the ship?
1 whole
and
day
2
and
days
night.
off?
Yes.
Do you sleep on board the ship?
Not while we're working, no.
You stay awake for 24 hours?
Yep, 24 hours.
My goodness. And do you ever get seasick when it's rough?
No, not now.
Barney and I would love to see the big engines that run the ship. Would you take us to see them?
Certainly, I'll take it down.
Come on, Barney, we're going to see the engine rooms. We're down in the very bottom of the ship in the control room, and above our heads are the decks where all the cars and lorries are parked. This is Mr. Pearson, who's the chief engineer. Mr. Pearson, what happens when the boat is ready to set sail?
When the engine's the boat's ready to start sail, the telegraph rings to stand by. We start the engines by pressing the button. When the engines are ready, we then press to inform the bridge that we are now ready to give engines. When the bridge are ready, they then press that button and we switch over to control to the bridge.
And we're off.
And we're off.
Could Barney and I see the engines?
You may, but you'll need to wear your special earmuffs and Barney.
The engine speed is 500 revs per minute, and look at all the different dials and lights to show the engineers if the engines are working properly. Barney has his own special pair of earmuffs to wear. Now you know why Barney and I had to wear earmuffs. It's incredibly noisy down here. I wouldn't like to have to work with that loud noise all the time. Look how big the engines of the ferry are. There are 2 engines to drive the ship, and the engineers look after them to make sure all the different parts are oiled and in good working order. Imagine these huge engines produce 8,000 horsepower. Of course, the engines don't just drive the ship, they also generate electricity to work all the lights and equipment on the ferry. The engines turn these big shafts, which make the propellers spin round and round and drive the ship forwards or backwards. The shafts go right through the big steel wall of the ship. On the other side are the propellers, churning away, speeding us on our way to Scotland.
Phew, that's better. It was very noisy in there. Barney's found a spares department. All these spare parts are kept on board, just in case the engines break down when the ferry is at sea. And look at all the different shapes and sizes of parts that go to make up an engine. It's a bit like a hardware shop with boxes and boxes of nails and bolts and screws. Well, we've seen the engine rooms, but I wonder who gives the orders and drives the ship. Let's go and find out.
It's the captain, and he wears a special uniform. And did you notice Barney's wearing a hat just like his?
Barney and I are up on the bridge, and it's from here that the captain and his officers sail the ship. At the moment, we're out in the open sea, so the automatic pilot is steering. The captain can set the course on his compass here, and then the machine actually steers the ship. The sailors call it Iron Mike. Well, you know that on board a ship, you don't talk about miles per hour, as you do when you're traveling on land. You measure the speed of a ship in knots, And that's because long ago in the old sailing ships, sailors wanted to know the speed of their ship. They would tie a piece of wood onto the end of a rope and put knots in the rope. Then they would throw the piece of wood into the sea and watch as the knots slipped over the side, and they would count them. And in that way, they could tell how fast the ship was sailing. Well, over here is another machine called the echo sounder, and that tells the captain how deep the water is underneath his ship to make sure that he doesn't run aground. There's another very important piece of equipment which helps the captain sail the ship when it's in fog or at night and he can't see where he's going. And that's the radar screen, because it shows up ships and rocks which are nearby. Well, we're on our way to Scotland, and it was a Scotsman who invented radar. His name was Robert Watson Watt, and he discovered that if you aim a radio beam at an aeroplane, it's reflected back to Earth, so that people on the ground can tell where the aeroplane is. Now the quartermaster has taken the wheel to steer the ship up Loch Ryan. He can use a chart like this to find his way. This is Scotland, and here's the loch we're sailing up. Do you see the paler part? That's very deep water, and the channel is marked by buoys. Did you know that on board a ship, sailors don't talk about left and right? For left they say port, and for right they say starboard. And the quartermaster has to keep the green buoys on his starboard side as he sails up the loch. We're just passing Cairnryan now, so it won't be long before we're docking in Stranraer Harbour.
There's the port of Stranraer just ahead. The captain stands on the bridge as we approach the dock. He makes sure that the ferry is docked safely. Look, part of one end of the ferry is open and we're inching towards the dock. The men are waiting on the pier to tie up the ferry's mooring ropes. There go the ropes. They're put round a bollard on the pier, tightened on the winch, and the ferry is pulled in firmly alongside the quay. Now the big ramp is slowly being lowered, and soon all the cars and lorries will be able to drive off the ferry. Barney's watching everything that's going on. I think he'd like to be the captain. Everyone is going on shore now, so it's time for us to go and find our car and drive off the ferry too.
Well, we've arrived in Scotland, and this is the port of Stranraer.